Yo, what's good? What's popping, everybody? You know what I mean? What's going on? What's going on? Let me get this link to people. Yo, let me put this on my Facebook. You know what I mean? That's right, that's right. Let's get this cracking. Think I finally figured out how to use this thing. You shall see if that is true. All right, so let me share this real quick. You know what I mean? Just give me a minute, guys. Just reach out to a few people here. You know what I mean? Just a few people. Just a few people. You know? Just a few people. Let's see here. Just give me a minute, guys. Give me a minute. Just give me a second. I'm just trying to get as many people involved as possible. You know? Hope everybody's having a good day. I'm trying to get this popping. You heard? So, all right. I got some people. All right. So, hey, Letitia, what's going on? All right, party people in the place to be. I go by the name of BK Apologist, transmitting live. New York be the city, Brooklyn be the borough. What's good? What's popping? I did this before previously. Just trying to work out the StreamYard thing. I think I figured it out. What I would like to do right now is to do a continuation of my critique of JABARI'S arguments from the debate that he had with Vince Bantu. Is Christianity the white man's religion? So, what's going on, Tyler? What up, Lobo? What's popping, everybody? So, with that being said, we're going to see if this thing works. Share screen. All right. Got the audio. Got the Chrome. All right. So, I want to play a particular part of this debate. Let me just get to it right now. All right. Right around here. Okay. All right.
This is an event that will
All right, 54.
and be spoken about for years.
All right.
Spread. No, you killed some black folk. You defiled their temples. That's what you did. I will not allow euphemisms to write away the destruction of my ancestors and his. We can't do that. And let's go further. When we say the message spread, we're going to talk about this more in the next round. I might even give you a peek of it in this round. When we say the message spread and that there's contextualization, let's understand that for the most part, all of those members of this tradition are using the same book. The book that has the same laws. The book that has the same cultural norms and mores. The book that has written out your African woman, who relegates her as a second-class human. I'm going to show it to you. I know some of you are like, that can't be. Listen, when I have this conversation with my own mother, who I love dearly, she says, oh, we don't read those parts.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right there. So The argument here that he has against Christianity is that women are devalued. Of course, he's speaking specifically of black women, but generally speaking, I'm sure he would agree that he thinks that women in general are somehow a lower class based on the Bible's teaching of how men and women are to interact. Well, with that, we need to go back to the very beginning to see if this is true. This is an amazing book by John Walton. It's a breakdown of the lost world of Genesis, chapter 1. And this is what he says about the woman, right? Because the woman here is called a helper. And the word helper in the Hebrew is izar. So let's see what this word means specifically. The word helper is common enough as a description of someone who comes to the aid or provides a service for someone. It carries no implications regarding the relationship or relative status of the individuals involved. In fact, the noun form of the word found in this verse, as used elsewhere, refers almost exclusively to God as the one who helps his people. If we expand our investigation to verbal forms, we find a continuing predominance of God as the subject, though there are a handful of occurrences where people help people. In this latter category, we find people helping their neighbors or relatives, people helping in a political alliance or coalition, and military reinforcements. Nothing suggests a subservient status of the one helping. In fact, the opposite is more likely. Certainly, helper cannot be understood as the opposite complement of leader. All right, so this is John H. Walton, Genesis, the NIV application commentary. So the very creation of woman was to help, yes, but not as an assistant, not as a sidekick, but as a remembrance of who the man's supposed to be, because we're both created in the image of God. The word image in the Hebrew is solem. It means a representative figure. The woman was created to represent her creator. That's her job. Just like it's the man's job to also represent his creator. The woman is to remind the man of what it means to be like God. That's her job, right? That's her role, to be like God, so that when man messes up and forgets his calling, all he has to do is look at the woman to remember, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be like God. Because when he sees her, he sees another image bearer of the creator, right? Doesn't really sound like a second-class citizen to me, right? Now, since we're talking about the quote-unquote white man's religion, and the white man was defined in this debate as the Greco-Roman world, I thought it'd be interesting to compare and contrast how women, the status and role of women was in the Greco-Roman world as opposed to being in the community of Christ. So in the Greco-Roman world, you had what's called the gynecium, which is segregated quarters for the wife in her husband's home in ancient Athens, right? So you lived in the house, but you basically was nothing more than roommates. But of course, in the church, there was no segregated quarters for wife in her home. She shared with her husband at all times. An Athenian wife was confined to her quarters when men guests were present. But we see in the Bible, women like Mary and Martha hosted Jesus in their home. In the Greco-Roman world, a man was allowed to have a hatera, which was a man's legal mistress in ancient Greece. Of course, in the church, no mistresses for men were allowed. In the Greco-Roman world, a veil was worn publicly by married women in Greco-Roman times and most other ancient societies. Whereas in the church, veiling of women discontinued after the 9th century. There is a clear distinction here between the role and status of women within the world of Rome and in the kingdom of God. And it makes sense for this to be the case here in this quote by Leopold Zenschernak. It says here, Christendom dare not forget that it was primarily the female sex that for the greater part brought about its rapid growth. It was the evangelistic zeal of women in the early years of the church and later, which won the weak and the mighty. It was the women that was leading the charge in the evangelism and growth of God's kingdom on earth. It was the women. Why would women be so fanatical and so inspired to do such a thing if they were not being empowered by the gospel itself? The freedom that was allotted to them by being a Christian. It was so freeing. It was so amazing that they had to share with other women so that they can also be freed from the bondage of the world in which they lived in. There is no second-class citizenship for women in God's church. In fact, even today, most churches the majority is what? Women, right? Some things don't change. Women have always got their power from the church. Now, what about ancient Kemet? Right? What about them? Well, there's two quotes that I have here from a publication that a lot of people in the conscious community refer to, which is UNESCO. And I have two quotes here from an article called Prostitution in Egypt by Sadawi Nawal. The first quote here is, prostitutes in ancient Egypt were respected and even considered sacred as the first institutions where prostitution flourished were the temples of the gods. Right? The second quote here from the same article, the god Amun indulged in sexual activity with many women under a religious guise. Families often gave their most beautiful daughters to the priests of this temple. As soon as they grew old, they were allowed to leave. So, how are women being used here? As opposed to in God's church. Now, of course, you could say, well, didn't Israel also get themselves involved in sacred prostitution? Absolutely. No question. But when Israel did it, they were straying from their religion. When ancient Kemet was involved in sacred prostitution, they were staying in their religion. Right? Big difference. In Israel, they were straying. In Egypt, they were staying. Now, does this mean that all women in Egypt were prostitutes? Absolutely not. But the thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention, every culture has a red light district. Every culture. Doesn't matter where you're from. Everybody has the bad side of town in their cultures. They just do. Kemet is no different. And a lot of times people in the conscious community love to romanticize as if this land is this Shangri-La of enchantment where everybody walked hand in hand and sang musicals as they picked berries from trees. And that's not the case, right? They had issues too. You need to address that. Just like we have to address the issues in our cultures as well. So another thing here is from Setting the Scene, the deceased and regenerative cult within offering table imagery of the Egyptian Ode to Middle Kingdoms by Barbara O'Neill. This is something that's really interesting, and it's going to set me up to talk more about women in ancient Egypt. It says here, until the later part of this period, the non-royal deceased had limited access to an afterlife beyond the tomb. The ontological chasm between the king and his subjects were emphatically obvious. Only the king crossed the great divide and ascended to heaven. While kings enjoyed a smorgasbord of stellar, solar, and Osirian expectations in the royal netherworld, the elite were restricted to an earthbound eternity. Direct contact with the gods was the prerogative of the monarch, who acted as a guarantor of continued order indicated in the change of seasons, the return of inundation, and the movements of celestial bodies. It says here that the old kingdom dissolution under centrifugal forces initiated a century of political disunity. In its ending, however, a crucial process was initiated. This involved the seepage of literacy and of ritual knowledge emanating from the highly influential elite stratum of Old Kingdom society in the provinces. This process activated ideological developments and funeral beliefs. Whereas in earlier phases of the Old Kingdom, only the king could expect to enjoy immortality. The situation now changed with the emergence of a process now referred to as a democratization of the afterlife of David. So basically, what's going on here in Kemet is that the access to heaven was restricted to the king. You know, it's a lot of talk of the Perep Emheru, the coming forth by day, otherwise known by many as the Book of the Dead. These books, these pyramid texts, these coffin texts, these spells that help carry you through the Duat into heaven was specifically just for the Nesut, for Pharaoh. And it wasn't until there was an economic meltdown in the Old Kingdom that some of this knowledge seeped into the regular people of Kemet. The king didn't care about your immortality. Again, the Nesut, the Pharaoh, did not care about his fellow citizens' immortality. He only cared about his own. So this idea of grasping and encouraging a now Valley worldview, I find strange because the Pharaoh did not care, did not want you to know. It only knew because it fell. That's the only reason why you got any knowledge of this. Now, for women, even though they got this knowledge now, there was a situation that they ran across when it came to getting to heaven through these texts. It says here, according to ancient texts, literate and educated Egyptians believed that creation and regeneration specifically belonged to the male gender. Men taught to be responsible for offspring from a sexual union, not women. Egyptian mythologies dealing with rebirth after death are also highly masculinized. In the ancient Egyptian mindset, only male divine beings such as Atum, Osiris, or Re had access to powers of creation. Where was I? Dealing with death are also highly masculinized. In the ancient Egyptian mindset, only male divine beings such as Atum, Osiris, or Re had access to the powers of creation or resurrection. Goddesses were believed to be protective vessels, essentially. Egyptian women had to shift their gender and masculinize themselves to enter the fields of peace and other realms of the afterlife. These gender alterations, therefore, had to be included in an elite Egyptian woman's funeral equipment, particularly her coffin. The Egyptian coffin was an excellent vehicle to transform the woman, or the man for that matter, into versions of Osiris, Re, or Atum. Give me a minute, guys. Okay. So, where was it? Yeah. The coffin permitted the female individual a kind of impermanent gender shift that allowed her to become temporarily like the gods Osiris, Atum, and Re, in order to use their powers of transformation to become an eternal, pure being, an Ak soul. The Ak was believed to be one of the blessed dead, an individual who had successfully passed the tribunal and moved as an effective and protected spirit into the afterlife. When the woman finally reached this blessed state, funeral images suggested that she returned to her feminine self, her true form from all eternity. Essentially, the same was true for men who joined with Osiris temporarily in order to become an Ak spirit, only to return to a transcendent human-like form. This is from Gender Transformation in Death, a case study of coffins from the Ramesses period Egypt from Kathleen M. Cooney, who is an Egyptologist, archaeologist, associate professor of Egyptian art and architecture in UCLA, and chair of the Department of Near Eastern Language and Cultures at UCLA. Here's another continuation of what we're talking about here. In the Egyptian view, this image of a woman, the picture here, has a male face and hands because they are colored red, the quote unquote male color. This use of color magically transformed her into a male being. A red face and hands also identified the deceased with the sun god Re, who traveled in a boat across the sky by day and into the land of the dead at night. This woman's quote unquote male red skin gave her access to transportation to the next life in the god's boat. A Shapti performed work assigned to the deceased in the next world. The Shapti was made by a rare and expensive process using multiple colors of faience. It was likely a product of a royal workshop. This is a lecture called A Woman's Afterlife, Gender Transformation in Ancient Egypt. This was organized by Edward Blyberg, curator of Egyptian art in the Brooklyn Museum. Now, what I want to do is actually have you hear from Miss Cooney herself. So let me just find out the time mark. All right, here we go. Let me do it from here.
So I'd like to welcome you all to the Brooklyn Museum.
All right.
Discussion, the better. Anyone notice how quickly we dropped the feminist discussion as soon as Trump became president? Yes, we had more to worry about, but damn, did we drop that like a hot potato? No need to talk about that anymore. And now we just say, oh yeah, Hillary's the president. Gone. We want to talk about this. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, I love talking about that stuff. We can talk.
Yeah, bring it back to you.
So, how did you come to this subject? And let's now segue into the New York State discussion.
Yeah.
So, how did you come to the subject of the differences between female burials and male burials in ancient Egypt?
You know what? I don't know how I came to it originally. I'm trying to think. I mean, the fact that I was working with 19th and 20th dynasty coffins, and you and I just discussed this in a way that makes it a reaction to certain religious events, which is really interesting. But I was working with the time period, 19th dynasty around 1300, 1250 BCE, which is very unusual in its depictions of coffins. And let me show you one right now. Sorry about the quick movement. Like this piece here. It's a very unusual thing to have the gender of either the female or the male expressed in a coffin. The norm is to show the deceased like this.
All right, you guys can't hear it? Okay.
Woman, though you would hardly know it, right? There are breasts there, but they're modeled very subtly in a way that you can't see.
All right, you guys can't hear it? All right, hold on. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing that? You guys can hear it, huh? Okay. Hold on. Hold on. Okay.
So I'd like to welcome you all to the Brooklyn Museum.
All right. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
And in many ways, he's right when he says that. So
Can you guys hear that?
It's a strange thing because the women have very much are moving and encroaching.
Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Questions of women in ancient Egypt, the female, I think,
Give me a 1 or something. Put up a 1 if you can hear this.
I think is often
Before I get to the section I want you guys to hear.
this, not just in Egyptology, but in ancient studies around the globe.
Volume is low, but you guys can hear it, yes?
They do a very encyclopedic, descriptive sort of.
All right, you can hear it? Okay, great.
These are the powers that women had. They could get
All right, cool.
property, or they couldn't. They had to veil, but they didn't have to.
All right, so let me get to the part.
A woman's place with the assumption, well, they don't even say that patriarchy is the order of the day. And then there's often.
All right, here we go.
So how did you come to the subject of differences between female burials and male burials in ancient Egypt?
You know what? I don't know how I came to it originally. I'm trying to think. I mean, the fact that I was working with 19th and 20th dynasty coffins, and you and I just discussed this in a way that makes it a reaction to certain religious events, which is really interesting. But I was working with the time period, 19th dynasty around 1300, 1250 BCE, which is very unusual in its depictions of coffins. And let me show you one right now. Sorry about the quick movement. Like this piece here. It's a very unusual thing to have the gender of either the female or the male expressed in a coffin. The norm is to show the deceased like this. Same. This is a woman, though you would hardly know it, right? There are breasts there, but they're modeled very subtly in a way that you can't see. And there are certain times in history when the Egyptians decided they wanted to be more upfront about the sexuality of the person on the inside of that coffin than in others. And the Ramesses period was one such time when they were very upfront about it. All of a sudden, they have these fabulous wigs, they have earrings, the breasts are there, and that body in white on the inside shows the undulations of the female form in a way that is new and striking and very unusual. And it made me think, what's going on with this? Because of course the deceased in this coffin is still called Osiris Nefertiti. She's not Hathor Nefertiti. She can't be. She's Osiris Nefertiti. She has to become the masculine entity to be reborn because of the means of rebirth or creation in ancient Egypt, which we can discuss. So this idea that the ancient Egyptian female had a problem in getting to the next life, I found very intriguing. In the same social,
Could you
yeah.
explain what the problem was?
So I'm going to stop it right there. So that's the scholar herself, Catherine Cooney, in the Brooklyn Museum, talking about the problem that women have when it came to getting to the afterlife, that they actually had to change gender to get to paradise. That sounds like a devaluement of women to me. Whereas in the Bible, men, women, Jew, Gentile, slave, free, everybody gets to go if you pledge your allegiance to God, of course. But in Egypt, it wasn't so easy for the woman. She actually had to become a different gender. Being a woman wasn't good enough to get to paradise. She had to like fudge the system in order to make it. All right. So here's another thing that Mr. Jabari says here. Give me a minute. All right. 56.
This is an event that will resonate.
Editions that were copied, that's in the next round. That the message spread. How does it spread? Does this mean that people who you purport to pray to, people who you purport to love, people who you purport to honor, are either killed, defiled, or made less than human, less than relevant? Just think of it for a second here. If you say that they willingly gave in to Christianity, you're saying something else. You are saying that they're indigenous African traditions, traditions that they practiced, traditions that they held dear, traditions that were copied, that's in the next round. Traditions that were copied weren't good enough for them. They had their own traditions. They didn't just say, I'm not doing nothing, maybe I'm gonna just wear a cross. It didn't work that way. They were forced. If you defile a temple that has been in existence for 3,000 years, you are doing isfet, sin. Even if you don't practice the tradition. If someone came up in here and turned this to a Kemetic shrine, and you know that this is your Kemetic brother talking to you, not someone distant who sees you as inhuman, that would like to subjugate you, you would raise hell on Sunday if you came back. And I said, well, we did something with Pastor Mason. He's not here anymore.
All right. So here Jabari is talking about that these Christians came and destroyed these temples and how atrocious that was, right? And that Christianity taught that all indigenous culture was terrible and you had to get rid of it. Now, in the previous video that I did with my man Adam Coleman, shout out to him, and congratulations to his newborn. You know what I mean? So that's why he hasn't been doing what I'm doing here. So he's doing some daddy duty, some serious daddy duty. We talked about how that the ancient Kemetic people were practicing the art of iconoclasm for centuries, and these Kemetic Christians, these Egyptian Christians, were actually carrying on tradition by destroying these idols because they believed that the idols carried these spirits. We no longer partake in these spirits, so we break these idols. The Christians, the Egyptian Christians, were doing the same thing. So they were actually upholding an ancient African tradition. So Jabari is incorrect when he makes that statement. But here he talks about the defacement of temples, right? And how even if you do not worship the God in that temple, you should let it be. And he uses a term called ishfet, which, you know, I've never heard of until this debate, to be quite honest. And that's why it's great to have these kind of dialogues with people with different worldviews, because you do learn. You learn some interesting things. So what I learned about ishfet was it was thought to be the counterpart of the term ma'at, meaning world order or harmony. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, ishfet and ma'at built a complementary and also paradoxical dualism. One could not exist without its counterpart. This is from Mulana Karenga, Ma'at, the moral idea in ancient Egypt, a study in classical African ethics. Another quote here, Ishfet and Ma'at balanced each other. Ma'at was to overcome Ishfet, that which is difficult, evil, disharmonious, and troublesome. Ishfet was to be overcome by good and to replace this unity with unity and disorder with order. This is from Ashanti Molefkate, Ma'at and human communication, supporting identity, culture, and history without global domination. Journal of the Intercultural Communication Studies, year 2011. So Ishfet is harmony. I mean, it's disharmony, right? It is the counter to Ma'at, which is balance. So with that being said, I would like to put your attention to this peer-reviewed article, right, by what's her name here? Elaine Sullivan from UCLA Encyclopedia of Egyptology. And this is entitled Karnak, Development of the Temple of Amun-Ra. So sometime in the 5th regional year, Amenhotep IV changed his name to Akhenaten and launched a fervent attack on the existence of gods other than the solar deity Aten. Amun was a special target, and his name and figure were effaced from temples throughout Egypt, including at Karnak. Shortly after, the king decided to leave the city of Thebes and move the center of Kut, the royal residence, and his burial site to Middle Egypt to a city he named Akhetaten, modern-day Tel El Armana. The wealth of the Amun-Ra temple at Karnak was diverted to building projects of the new city, and the temple itself was closed. So here's my question. The Pharaoh, did he commit Ishfet, or was this Ma'at? Was he being in harmony, or was this him being disharmonious in his spirituality? Because he took down temples of gods he did not worship. Now, according to Jabari, we shouldn't be doing that. But here we have a Pharaoh, a Nesut Bidi, doing just that. So is this Ishfet, or is this Ma'at? Now, this is very interesting. Something happens to Akhenaten's temple when he is gathered up to his forefathers. It says here, his devotion to religious affairs caused him to neglect growing rebellion in Western Asia, while the Egyptian priesthoods grew increasingly restive at the neglect and suppression of the gods they served. Akhenaten's death was followed by a reaction and the restoration of the traditional pantheon and its worship. Although virtually no trace of the Aten temple at Karnak was left at its site, when the temple was dismantled after Akhenaten's death, I'm going to say it again, when the temple was dismantled after Akhenaten's death in the 40th century BC, large-scale reuse of the blocks and subsequent buildings has resulted in recapture of many thousands of them during numerous archaeological repair projects at Karnak over the last 60 years. During this period, more than 25,000 decorated blocks have been removed from monuments in the vicinity of Karnak, and a possibly equal number of undecorated blocks were recovered. But most of the latter were considered unimportant and were reinserted invisibly at various points during the repair and restoration work. This is from Smith Winfield Ray, the Akhenaten Temple Project, Expedition Magazine, 1967. So not only did the Pharaoh take down in the face other temples of gods he didn't worship, the minute he died, these other priesthoods did the same to his temple of his god, a god that they didn't worship. So were the priesthood guilty of Isfet, or was this Ma'at? Was this Isfet, or was this Ma'at? Because again, according to Jabari, you should leave the temple alone. Even if you don't worship the god that's in that temple, there's no reason for you to destroy it. But here, this was the order of the day in ancient Kemet. I no longer serve this god. I serve this other god. My allegiance is to this other god. Therefore, any remembrance of the previous god got to go. And that's what they did. Akhenaten did that to the pantheon so that he can worship Atum. And then when Akhenaten died, they got rid of Atum and went back to the pantheon. This is what's happening. So again, is it Ishfet or is this Ma'at? Because it's not really up to us, right? It's up to them, right? This is ancient documents that we're looking at. Did they consider destroying the temples sin? Or was it a pledge of allegiance to the God that they were currently in relations with? Because in the eyes of these ancient people of Kemet, who made Jesus king, and in this case, he's not only the king, but he's also the new God that they pledge allegiance to. Well, they did what came natural in ancient Kemet, right? We pledge allegiance to Jesus. He's the Pharaoh. He's the Nesut Bidi. He's also the God. We can't have no other gods besides this God, so these other dudes got to go. It's nothing new. There's nothing new being done here in ancient Kemet. They are upholding a classical ancient African tradition. You got to pick a side. Pick a side, pick a side. Once you pick a side, you got no love for the other team. They've been doing this since the pre-dynastic era, since there was such a thing as gods and kings in ancient Kemet. Once you pledge allegiance to one side, the other side got to go. The Christians in ancient Kemet were doing what came natural. So you can't be against what they're doing. They actually are upholding African tradition. In their eyes, it was Ma'at. Because Ma'at is an ideal. It's unity, right? Reciprocity. Well, they found that in the gospel. They found Ma'at in the gospel. If they were really inspired and really seeking that principle, they found it in the personage of Jesus. So once they made Jesus Nesut, Jesus Lord, everybody had to bounce. They had to go. So yeah, this temple gets torn down. Yeah, we're going to change up the decorations here because we've pledged allegiance to a new God. And when you pledge allegiance to a new God, the other gods got to go. It's no different than when a new president comes into the White House. They change up the decorations. It doesn't look the same. They put a different coat of paint because there's a new president in the White House. There's a new God in town. Everything changes. And the old guard has to go. It was very much an African thing to do. Right? So if you're going to get upset at the Christians for doing this, I'm going to need the conscious community to keep that same energy when it comes to their own traditions. I never heard no one complain about Akhenaten shutting down the temples of the Kemetic pantheon of gods. I don't hear nobody in the conscious community getting upset about how they dismantled the temple of Atum. I've never seen a video. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know everything. No, I've never heard no one beefing about that. And someone who subscribes to a now Valley worldview. Right? So that's basically it. That's what I wanted to share, guys. Cherry Love, what's popping? What's going on? So yeah, so I'm just doing this. I hope you guys heard the videos. The screen was a little bigger. I finally figured out how to make the screen bigger. Yeah, please review this. Look at the sources that's been cited. If you need the links of the videos that I showed of the other scholars talking about what they did, just inbox me. I'm more than happy to share those YouTube videos. We have to become equipped, right? This is not about attacking Jabari in any shape, form, or fashion. I have the utmost love and respect for Jabari. Good guy. Never did me dirty in any which way. I just disagree with his worldview, and we're just breaking it down and analyzing what he's saying so that we can be better prepared when other people make these same claims. Cherry Love, when is part 3 coming out? That's a great question. I do not know. I couldn't tell you. But once I find out, well, we'll all find out because they'll release the video, right? But if I find out anything, I'll definitely holler at you, Cherry. You know how we do. So yeah, guys, I'm about to end this video. That's all I wanted to share. It wasn't a lot. If there's any questions in the Cherry Love is funny. If there's any questions you have about what was shown or about the debate, I was there. I'll take any questions, before I sign off. I'll give you guys a second. But please review the information. Please share the video, like, share, subscribe, as they say, right? Tell a friend to tell a friend. I'll definitely be doing more videos, more teachings. When Adam Adam has a time of reprieve from daddy duty. Hopefully, we'll jump in and do something together. Of course, I'll be doing things with my man CMB, Colin Bailey, the ambassador. You know, Context 360 is in the building. That's true. That's facts. We got to do a hangout together. That's true, Cherry. That's very true. We've never really done that, so we got to do that. So yeah, guys. Thank you for coming. I know it came out of left field. I had the day off, and I said, "Hey, why not? Let me see if I can get this going." So, so yeah. So it's BK Apologist, guys. Thank you for being here. Again, please share the video when it becomes available. You guys got any questions? Please leave it in the comment, like, share, and subscribe. And what's Sonetta's belief? That's interesting. I would say that, well, he's definitely Pan-African in his ideology. He claims not to have a supernatural component to his ideology, but then he'll say certain things that would contradict that, in my opinion. Right? But he's very much into what's called comedic science. But what's funny about that particular community, right? They're kind of split down the middle, because you have people like Jabari who definitely believe in the supernatural aspect of Nile Valley culture. I mean, he is a high priest. You know, he has a shrine. They have rituals. They pray, right? But there's another side of the community where they only look at these ancient emblems as signs of a higher science. You know, a great way to explain it is it's Jabari versus Dr. Reggie, right? Dr. Reggie, they're very good friends, but they are polar opposites in the way they look at ancient Egypt. You know, Jabari's definitely more in tune with the spirituality of it, whereas Reggie sees what people think is spiritual, and he thinks of it as science. You know, well, actually, no, Letitia. What she did was, because she became the pharaoh, right? Because her child was too young, and it had nothing to do with her like cross-dressing. I've heard people say that that she was, you know, a lesbian. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with, I want people to respect me as king, so I got to wear what the king wears. So she had to put on the fake beard, because all the pharaohs, when you see them with the beard, those are fake beards. Because if you notice, all the kings and the priests are all clean shaven. The pharaoh only wore that as a decorative piece, and it was a sign of his authority. So Hatshepsut was like, well, I'm the king, and I need everybody to recognize I'm the king, so I'm going to throw on this beard so everybody can recognize who's in charge here. So it had nothing to do with any kind of sensuality or her being gender fluid. It was all about, you know, if you're the president, you know, you wear a nice suit, you know, you got the little flag pin on your lapel, you know, you got looking, quote unquote, presidential, right? That's what she was doing. She was looking like a pharaoh, you know, so that was her thing. So, but no, she wasn't cross-dressing. She was the leader, and she needed everybody to recognize. And they weren't happy with it, because the minute she died, they started doing iconoclasm against her legacy. You know, so now you would think, Cherry, that they were, because she was, and she was actually a very good leader. She led them in battle. Like, she was getting money for the community. If you ever do some research, she was an amazing leader, smart, great strategist, right? But once she died, they literally tried to erase her from the record. But another 10 jacket. Yeah, don't do the Barack thing, because then you they catch you, right, Beatrice. You can't wear a 10 jacket if you could be president. But yeah, she was an amazing leader. She was really good. But you would think that after she died, that they would hold on to her legacy. They did the quite opposite. They tried to get her out of here quick. Like, if you look at her statues, you see they broke the nose, because when you break the nose, they believe that the spirit will be released. So they didn't want her spirit, they didn't want her legacy nowhere around. they didn't like her. I don't know if it's because if she was a woman or not, but it is interesting that, you know, somebody who did such a great job leading Egypt, they would do so dirty, right? So, but why did they try? They didn't. Well, the whoever stepped in, I forgot who was the next in line. I think it was her son. They didn't, you know, it's very narcissistic. Being the pharaoh is very narcissistic. I need all the focus to be on me. So I can't have anyone looking at the other king. Cause you know how it is. It's like, well, you know, yeah, you're the president, but you know, we sure miss the other president, right? And in fact, many people today would feel that way about our current administration. I don't want to make this political, but a lot of people are missing the previous administration, right? So if I completely obliterate that previous administration from memory, you have nothing to compare it to, right? It's the focus got to be on me because I'm the leader, I'm the Nasu, right? I mean, why do you think they made these huge pyramids for? They were just very elaborate mausoleums because I need everybody to remember me, you know. And thousands of years later, here we are right now talking about Hatshepsut. Here we are talking about Akhenaten. So it worked, right? What CNB says here, the 42 family never told her. Anyone whoever said that respected her. While yeah, that's true. Right? Nobody had an issue with Hatshepsut when she was alive, but the minute she died, they got rid of her. So that's a lie, and they broke my eye. They were being that was Ishfak. They were being disharmonious. That's fact, CMB. Wow. The teacher says in this book, it said her son got rid of her because it was a shame for a woman to be king of Egypt. Wow. Well, that kind of goes against what most people in the conscious community say today, right? The black woman is God. I guess not, according to them. In fact, you know, the black woman wasn't good enough to make it to heaven, according to their spirituality. She had to become a black man, or just a man in general, depending on what dynasty you're talking about. Because you know there was an admixture. It wasn't always just straight up black. You know what I'm saying. But yeah. So it's crazy, you know. Cherry, you got cut off. I don't see what you. So how W? I don't know what that means. Oh, so how is that Christian's fault? It's not. It's not Christian's fault. He's just mad because the Christians were the ones that did it. You know, but here's the thing. They were only doing what came natural. It was part of the culture to destroy the previous God's legacy or the previous leaders or king's legacy. They've always done that. You're just mad because the new king in town is Jesus. And you got an issue with that. Oh, well. You know, what can I tell you? Yeah. Wow. Latasha, inbox me the title of the book. I'll see if I can find that. All right. So no, it's not the Christians' fault. They want to make it our fault because they have a bias towards Christians, Cherry. But you know, it's what we did. Those Egyptians did what came natural. They saw Jesus. They saw the gospel. They saw Ma'at in that sense. They saw harmony, reciprocity, and peace in the gospel. They accepted Jesus as king and God. And once you do that, you can't have no other king besides Jesus, right? So what they have to do? Iconoclasm. You know, have you heard from Jabari since making these videos? I haven't. I personally haven't. I definitely inboxed him just to make sure he was doing okay. And he was cool. We had, very cordial conversation. He seems to be fine. I've seen him recently on Sonetta, so he seems to be okay, for what I could tell. But yeah. So yeah, man. Yeah, it's crazy, Cherry. Yeah, it's crazy. It's you hear what they say, but then you got to hear what their ancestors said. And a lot of times it doesn't match up. It just doesn't match up at all. It's like a lot of times when they make a claim, the question you need to ask them is like, okay, that's interesting, but can you show me a papyrus or a stele or something that was written in the walls of Egypt that says what you're saying right now? You got to ask them that, because they can tell you anything. It's like, okay, that's great. I understand that's how you see it, but did they see it that way? It's the same thing with our Bible study, right? We can't go by our 21st century perspective if we're reading something that was written during the Iron Age, right? We got to look at it from their perspective. They need to do the same thing. They need to practice exegesis as well in their texts. It's not just the Bible. Any ancient document, you got to read it from the perspective of that time and of those people. You know? So they can't say we copied them. No, we can't. They can't. You know, and again, like what Bantu says, what does that mean to copy? There was no such thing as copy back then, right? That didn't exist in their vocabulary. You know, there was no intellectual property, you know. And if you're going to go that route, well, you're going to be in trouble with Egypt, because even Jabari says that Egypt is the flower of Africa, that Egypt has drawn its beauty from the other various cultures within the continent. So then that means Egypt has plagiarized some other parts of Africa as well. They're too busy reading modern issues into the, yeah, right. And let's keep it 100. A lot of quote unquote Christians do the same thing. You know, they like to smuggle in what's happening today in these texts, and they come up with these crazy interpretations, you know, and other people who try to use the Bible, you know, for their own craziness. Why they don't talk about them copying other nations' religions? Because it's bias. It's all about their worldview. You know, it's all about their worldview, and everybody else's worldview sucks. You know, and they don't take the time out to be introspective of their own worldview. You know, as Christians, we have to do that all the time. We always have to make sure what we are preaching and reading is correct, because we know that we're going to be judged by the word of God. So as believers, we have to take the word of God super serious, because at the end of the day, that's how we're going to be judged. We're going to be judged by that book. So you better know what that book's about. Like, we can't play games. So we always have to constantly go back and study and learn more, so that we have a better understanding, because we are supposed to live our lives according to these scriptures. So because of that, we have to know the cultural context, the linguistic context, the political temperature of those days, you know, so that the inside jokes, the slang, the idioms, we have to know all these things so that we can properly interpret the text, so we don't look crazy out here. You know, so yeah, that's what we're trying to do here, you know. And which is funny, they like to say we're not scholarly, right? We don't read, which is crazy. Now, are there some of us that are guilty of that? Yeah. But those of us right now, you know, in the chat, we're trying to change that, aren't we, guys? Right? We're trying to change that. You know, we out here, we're on the interwebs, we got boots on the ground, you know, we're in the libraries, we're in the books, you know, we're trying to change that and inspire other people to fall in love with this Bible that we love, you know, so much, you know. I wonder if Jabari ever went, hey, you never know. You never know. I mean, he's been going to Egypt for the last 10 years at least. I'm sure he's passed by one of them Coptic joints, you know. He's not going to probably tell us, you know, but I'm sure he's seen them, you know. So, but yeah, guys, I mean, that's what it is. Like, we have to make sure we know our word, because as you see, we're constantly being bombarded with these different critiques and claims. And, you know, we have to be prepared to answer, right? That's what Paul told Timothy. We have to be prepared to answer. You know, the old, you know, well, let me tell you my testimony. As powerful as that is, for a lot of people, they don't even want to hear that no more. They don't care what Jesus did for your life. They got these 10 questions, and if you can't answer all 10 to their complete satisfaction, then I don't want to be a Christian. So we got to know these things. Okay, so how do we pass those churches up then? I don't understand what you mean, Cherry. Pass what churches up? Are you talking about why Jabari passed those churches up? I don't know if he has or he hasn't. You know? Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he's done it. You know, I don't know if that's part of his itinerary when he goes to Egypt. You know, I'm sure he's very focused on, you know, those ancient temples, and you know, maybe now he'll take a peek. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. You know, I agree, Cherry. I definitely agree. He needs to see these Nubian churches, these black people worshiping Jesus. Yeah. Freely, you know, freely to this day, you know, so regardless of whatever persecution might come their way, you know. So, yeah. But that's what it is, guys. That's what it is. So, again, wow, it's an hour already. Okay. So, thank you so much for being a part of this. I didn't expect to be this long, but I definitely want to talk to you guys in the chat a little bit. Yeah, again, like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. You know, BK Apologist, you know, just want to serve you guys, provide you whatever information I have so that you guys can use it for your own defense of the gospel, you know, so that we can be thoroughly equipped for every good work. And with that, I will say peace.